In progress. I am the Senate.
We are live. Heck, let's just jump into it.
What?
Hello and welcome to another episode of Marvel Watchers. Of the Nerdosphere, a podcast where we discuss everything that has to do with the MCU. Everything from the big screen to the small screen and anything in between. If you can nerd out about it, we're going to talk about it. And tonight, we're returning to our love of the MCU. I'm one of your hosts, Clayton, joined as always by my brother, COVID Bane, the biggest palate this side of the Mississippi, mustachio monstrosity, Corbin.
Hello, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine.
I'm happy to hear that. So happy to hear that.
I forgot which podcast we were doing for a second because we're talking about Hawkeye tonight.
Oh yeah, dude. I'm so excited to dive into it all. But first and foremost, we have chit chat we need to talk about.
Oh god. Do
It's
we?
nothing super it's nothing super serious. Just first of all, it's been a while since we've talked. I was away last week, which further inspired us to have the Wheel of Time soft launch be on the Nerdosphere's RSS feed as well. But I was in New York City selling t-shirts for Tea Turtle. And that actually ended up being a really fun experience. I ended up doing over $4,000 than what they had projected I would do at that show. So that was like a nice slam dunk. One of my bucket list items has always been to walk through Central Park, specifically during the fall time. So it was something that I was able to do, which was awesome because the show on Friday didn't start until it was 1:00. So the goal was just to wake up early on Friday and go do some stuff. So went to the Natural History Museum. Something else I did not realize that I wanted on my bucket list, but nevertheless has been checked off, is I've now had to drive a big U-Haul van twice in downtown New York. So
how big was it?
It was a U-Haul van.
Yeah, but how big? It was just a van?
It's the big cargo van.
So just a van,
I guess.
Not a box truck.
Not a box truck, no.
Oh.
But it was just big enough to where it allowed me to feel a little bit more confident on the road. I claimed it and I turned into the NYC, New York Corb. I was honking my horn at people. I was like, get out of my way. I'm driving here, bitch.
Wow. So, intimidating.
Yeah.
You're so intimidating. I can't even. You're scaring me.
Yeah. Also, when I got back, I had to go in for more injections or whatever. But I had to do what's called a blood dump because my blood is thick for whatever reason. And they had a really hard time finding the vein. And so they went in and then I had to dig around.
Ooh.
And then something happened with the bag. And basically my left arm was they couldn't find it. So they were we'll wait till next week. But it was a horrifically painful experience. And I hate needles. So that was just the worst.
Yeah, fuck those guys. All I could think about was when you said you had thick blood, was that TikTok sound. Damn, boy, that boy thick, boy.
That blood is thick, boy. I think the only other thing that I wanted to make sure I talked to you about before we got into any sort of Marvel stuff and to see if you had anything you want to talk about in the past couple of weeks is the Nerdosphere has a Wheel of Time podcast that is hosted by you and Anime Ultra's Jesse called the Wheel of Time Watchers.
We do.
And I just want to let you know that I have been watching the show and I have no idea where the fuck all the money is going because season 1 of Game of Thrones was $6 million and this show is $10 million an episode. And whoever the one girl is who does the wispy magic, and that's another complaint, is I listened to the podcast and you guys hit the nail on the head. I feel like they're going at a pace where like I just don't know who they are. I'm just like, meh. So the wispy girl, the Aes Sedai girl,
Mhm.
her magic, the special effects in that looked like I was watching the CW show. And I was like, this is not okay. Like, there's no excuse for this.
Yeah, and I brought that up specifically on the podcast before we like dove into spoiler stuff when we were in our like just general thoughts before we dove into spoiler territory on our official episode 1 where we reviewed the first 3 episodes. And it's reported that this Wheel of Time show is getting $10 million an episode, which is significantly more than Game of Thrones, as you mentioned, which Game of Thrones was, their CGI when they did do it was phenomenal. And I just don't understand where that money is going. What did they spend that money on? And it almost leads me to believe that they probably legitimately did spend that amount of money, but they didn't hire the right people, is what I'm kind of settled on.
Yeah.
So they're paying $10 million an episode for, several hundred grand worth of quality. And it's super disappointing. But yeah, it's not. I'm a little more positive on the Wheel of Time podcast. I'm going to be a little bit more blunt here. I'm not happy. It's the series is phenomenal. I'm re-listening to it right now, so I have a better mindset for the podcast as we go forward and compare the show to the book. And I said this in the podcast, so if you haven't, listened to the podcast, this isn't going to be rehashing, but if you have, sorry for saying it again, but they've changed things that don't need to be changed. There's always going to be things that are condensed or things that are removed when you're taking a fantasy epic or a sci-fi epic, whatever it is,
Right.
to the screen compared to the book, because obviously in a book you have hundreds and hundreds of pages, or in Wheel of Time's case you have 800 plus pages of book, over 14 books. So I mean that's a lot. But as I brought up in the podcast, Robert Jordan is an extremely detailed author when it comes to descriptions of cities, of clothing, of that kind of thing. So when you remove that, which can be shown visually in seconds, and then you remove the inner dialogue, which can be shown with body language and other cinematography tricks in seconds or minutes,
Yeah.
you're left with a very easy to translate story, in my opinion, to television or even to movies. But I feel like television is where it should be. And they've made changes that they obviously felt they thought they had to make to translate it to TV when they didn't need to. So I'm super bummed about it, and the quality is just not where it needs to be. They want it to be, Amazon wants it to be the next Game of Thrones, and it's not going to with the current quality. It's not going to. It's just not. Whether you enjoyed the first 3 episodes and you're looking forward to the rest of the season or not, the quality is not on the same level. It just isn't. And that's just objective. That's not even, an opinion. It's just not. So I don't know. I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic that we've had this clunky opening and that there's a reason behind releasing the first 3 episodes all together, because they realize when they put it all together that we really need to release several episodes at once to get people involved, and it's just going to be good, going forward. But man, I'm bumming right now about it, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of why I wanted to bring it up a little bit, not to like make you rehash things that you've already said on that podcast, because we want our fans in the nerdosphere to go there for that content. But I at least wanted to bring it up because as someone who has only ever heard you talk about the books, I just wanted to let you know, as a casual observer of someone who does like highbrow fantasy, what my opinions are on the show. And it's a little bit forced for me to watch it right now. I'm not totally vibing. There's been some dialogue where Matt has made me laugh, but even that actor is going to be recasted in season two,
Yep.
from what you guys said. So
Mm-hmm.
I almost feel like I can't even get attached to that character, which kind of sucks because for whatever reason, whether it's he wasn't performing the way that they wanted him to, or there's other drama, I don't know. But that character will be tonally different no matter what because it's a different actor. So now I'm almost like disengaged a little bit from even like being attached to the one character that's bringing charisma to the screen.
Yeah.
So I after these first three episodes, I'm like, well, fuck. I guess this kind of reminds me of when I didn't like Harry Potter and then I read the books and I was like, oh no, this story is phenomenal. I feel like now I have to fucking slog through all those goddamn books.
When you get into it, it's not going to be a slog. I know, and I kind of bring it up in our introductory episode 0 that we released a couple weeks ago. But outside of Lord of the Rings, fantasy's always been daunting to me. At least it was, when I was younger, because I didn't feel like I needed or wanted to spend the time to dive into like some massive, because like what is it, Dritz, is that his name?
Yeah.
Like
Dritz,
that.
the dark elf.
Yeah, the Dark Elves from Dungeons and Dragons. Like, you walk down the aisle at Barnes and Noble, and those covers are so intriguing, and you want to read that stuff, but it's like, well, where do I start? What do I do? There's so much, and
Yeah.
I never thought that I would get into that because there's just so much to tackle. But, Wheel of Time really pulls you in. It's easy to get sucked in, and unlike Dungeons and Dragons or some other properties, it's just a straight line from 1 to 14. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, man, I hope that our audience listening, if you're a fan of Wheel of Time, go over and check out Wheel of Time Watchers and get an in-depth look. Like I said, I'm the more I think about it, the more like down about it I'm getting. So like, in the podcast, I'm way more positive about it than I am right now. I'm super bummed, man. I kind of suspected that you would want to talk about it and ask about it. And I was like, man, I'm just going to have to be super blunt in Nerdosphere compared to Wheel of Time Watchers. Cause it's bumming me out, dude. Cause I mean, that's a new podcast. We want it to keep going, even though the show's not exactly what either of us expected, but we want to keep it going because we love the show so much. And we've even tossed around like, how do we keep this show going if we want to? Do we want to move into like talking about just fantasy stuff, like talk about the book series itself, or jump into Brandon Sanderson books, and how do we expand it from there? So like, the podcast itself is exciting and we're loving doing it, but I'm super bumming about the show right now.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's good. I guess my fear was I was going to bring it up and you were going to be like, "Oh man, I'm loving it." And I was like, "Where is your taste gone, you fool? You're back to season 1 of the Flash where we were so bamboozled." Where
No, but the difference is I know we joke about it and we say, did we have the wool over our eyes in Flash season 1, 2, 3, and we just didn't realize. I truly think that show just went downhill, and this show, Wheel of Time, unfortunately, is starting downhill and it has to run uphill.
Yeah.
So
let me ask you this.
Hopefully they do it, but
let me ask you this real quick, and then we don't have to like stay in this rabbit hole. But we got a little bit of dialogue from Rand and his father on like finally what does the Wheel of Time actually kind of represent. And it's just like the sense of like reincarnation that's happening, where people are continuously reborn. Obviously, the theme of reincarnation was already introduced from the get-go because of the Dragon Reborn, but it seems like everyone in that world does go through some sort of reincarnation process. And there's been leading phrases of like the Dark One is awakening. At this point in the story, in the book, is there a better concept of like what the actual evil threat is? Because right now it's just so ominous and vague. I'm just like, it sucks that like Tolkien became kind of like the godfather of fantasy, and everyone else has almost done a better job at doing fantasy than he did. But it's hard for me to like listen to this and not immediately think of Sauron, right? Where
Right.
I'm like, I almost feel like you have to get ahead of the Dark One shtick early enough to like really identify like what is the evil presence, what is their goal, and to differentiate it from the plagues of Middle Earth.
Sure.
And so right now where I'm at, I'm like, oh, so it's just Sauron? Like, what is it? Like,
So, and obviously, this is kind of another thing where the book is always going to be better than the show. But the show, obviously, and that's something that I didn't even think about because I already know who the Dark One is, and I know what role the Dark One, excuse me, plays. And as a casual observer, obviously, they didn't do a good enough job to reel you in on that aspect because you're asking questions about it. The book does do a really good job kind of introducing the Dark One just through the way people behave, through there's just a sense of urgency that um we have to stop the Dark One from waking up. It's basically the Dark One is basically the devil. So the light and the creator is kind of what the world religion is. So the creator
okay,
created everything, and the creator is the light, and the light is everything that's good. And the Dark One is the antithesis of the creator. He wants to destroy everything. He's chaos. So that's kind of where it's at.
okay,
And I mean, you get a little bit more in the beginning because the beginning of the book actually kind of shows you the last few hours of the first dragon, Lews Therin, of his life. And there's some conversations between him and Ishamael, one of the main Forsaken, who are like the evil Aes Sedai, basically, for, just dumbing it down for those who aren't as familiar, people who can wield the magic of the world. Like one of the main evil bad guys is there with him as he kind of goes crazy and dies. And their conversation really kind of reveals a lot of the background of what's going on. So it establishes pretty quick what's at stake and what's happened. So, and in the show, we just get a quick, cold opening narrated by Moraine, where she just says that men were arrogant and tried to stop the Dark One. And unfortunately, I guess it doesn't translate as well to the casual audience, where you wouldn't ask questions about it.
Yeah, like I said, it was just like I was like, oh, am I getting into another fantasy epic where the evil presence is just that? And so, like I said, I just didn't walk away from those first 2 episodes actually having a good idea or concept of what the evil is in the world. So, I mean, that's good to know. But other than that, how have you been, Mr. Bumming Pants?
Oh, I've been fine. Yeah, like you asked me how I'm doing after we spend 10 minutes about me bummed about my my greatest nerd love being brought finally to television. It's just mediocre at best. Yeah, no, I'm doing fine. I'm excited to talk about Hawkeye. I was worried that it wouldn't be good, but not to spoil anything, I'm enjoying it. I still haven't seen Eternals, kind of bummed about that. I haven't seen Ghostbusters yet, kind of bummed about that. But I did start Tokyo Revengers.
What's that?
It's an anime that's pretty popular.
Oh,
And it's okay. I can see why it's popular, but it's just okay.
yeah, I haven't seen Ghostbusters yet either. And in fact, we had one opportunity where we kind of talked about it, Morgan and I, when we were in New York. But we were just way too fucking tired.
Yeah, I
Like,
bet.
I was in such physical agony.
Arcane, though, on Netflix, the League of Legends animated show, continues to blow me away. They're releasing it in 3 episodes at a time each week, and this week was episode 6, 7, 8.
Is that the first time Netflix has done timed releases on a show?
No, they've done timed releases before, but it's the first time they've done like it in groups for sure.
Okay.
Because they have dabbled before in weekly releases, but not as much. There's only a handful of shows, I think.
Okay.
But this one obviously is one of them, but they're releasing them in batches. And we're up to 9 episodes now. And I'm on like episode 8, I think I was watching today after watching Hawkeye. Man, that show just continues to blow me away. It's almost perfect. Like I don't think there's anything bad about it. And I'm not a League of Legends fan. Like it's gorgeous. The story is intriguing. I want to watch more. I care about the characters. It's phenomenal.
Now let me ask you this: the art style of Arcane. We've talked about how CG and anime is this ever creeping parasitic organism that's like trying to take it over. Now, if the end goal of that is to look similar to the art direction in Arcane, is that something that you can actually get on board with? Or is it just that Arcane is just so specific and unique that it's cool here, but keep it away from over here?
I would still say that it's a pretty specific art style. If the CGI in anime was the quality that we see in Arcane, I don't think we would ever complain about it. But the beauty and the allure of anime itself is the gorgeous hand-drawn animations, the typical, traditional 2D animations.
Yeah.
So I think any deviation from that, unless it's a specific, artistic approach, is kind of like blah. So even if they, like, let's say My Hero Academia comes out next season and it's in the style of Arcane, I'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you know what I mean? Like, even though it's
fair,
gorgeous in Arcane, it's that's not what I want for my anime. And, Arcane's not an anime. It's an American produced CGI television show. So,
yeah. That's fair.
But, Japan's obviously far behind on the CGI aspect of television shows, animation shows at least. So,
yeah. Gotcha. Well,
yeah.
cool. I'm really excited that you and I actually did a really good job at not talking to each other about what our topic is today, which snaps for us, because so often we tell each other we're not going to do this, but then we send each other
that's not completely true. I did text you once.
That's true.
Because I was laughing out loud in the office today. I was just like, I even recorded a voice text about it, and I was like, I'm not going to send it because I didn't want to spoil Tim on anything. Like, I wanted him to experience it walking in, and I didn't know if he had watched it yet or not. So I just ended up texting you alone instead. But man.
And I don't know how exactly you want to dive into us reviewing this. If you just want to do like general impressions and dive in, or just fucking dive in. All I will say is that the negative reviews on this show can go get fucked.
Yeah, let's just dive right in, man. I don't think there's only 2 episodes. We're going to talk about our initial impressions of the series, what we expect going forward, what we want going forward. Nothing at this point is spoiled. I don't think there's anything that's been revealed that in the first 2 episodes that we'd talk about that could be considered spoilers for the show, because it's only the first 2 episodes, so
yeah,
let's just go continue with that thought.
But you had shared a screenshot that I had read earlier in the week from GameSpot that gave it a 5 out of 10, and then when you go through like the negatives, the first one is like, you can tell that Rife was not given enough artistic leverage to express himself, and blah, 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 blah. Listen, this show is, for me, a breath of fresh air. And you have to understand, those who are listening, where I'm coming from when I say this. WandaVision was lucky because it was so artistically driven that it was able to survive the weekly format. We've already discussed on Marvel Watchers, we've discussed on the Nerdosphere that it wasn't until Loki that shows were truly designed to be weekly. And that's why Captain Falcon and Winter Soldier was probably particularly bad, because it was designed to be binged rather than like having these weak ass episodes lingering for an entire week until we got the next one that had no sense of payoff.
Yeah. Not only did that kill the show for most people, it also killed our podcast.
And oh yeah, definitely. To the point where like
literally Marvel Watchers is no longer a thing because of the lack of interest in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We could not create content that was getting the audience because nobody needed or wanted to know more about that show.
Yeah, no, not at all. And, you know, having watched that show and realizing like this could have been a movie and it would have been like an okay movie.
It would have been better as a movie.
Definitely. And then, you know, you get Loki, which is like this crazy, like bonkers concept of an idea. So really Hawkeye is the first time we're seeing like probably what the quality of most of the Marvel TV shows are actually going to be. Because again, much like WandaVision, Loki is so abstract and so bonkers that like it kind of like gets a lot of leniency because of the bold things that it does. Whereas this is a much tighter to the chest story. We're seeing one of the mortal Avengers on the ground, so it's kind of like a street level story, and it's more intimate, which I really appreciated because Jeremy Renner is a great Clint Barton. I've always wanted to see more of him, and this is for me, and then I'll let you say how you've just thought about the show in general. This for me is what I've always wanted out of the concept of Marvel TV shows, which is me getting to know my heroes in a more intimate fashion. Like I'm excited that for like the next 6 weeks, because I think it's an 8-episode show, the next 6 weeks, I get to spend 40 minutes with Clint and I get to know him better. Like that's so cool.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. This show, I was really worried going in because of the reviews and because, honestly, because of Falcon and the Winter Soldier and how disappointing those two characters were when they attempted to hold your attention on their own. Like we talked it to death on Marvel Watchers, but those characters without Steve Rogers really can't exist on their own, unfortunately. I'm looking forward to what they try to do going forward. We know that there's going to be a Captain America 4 starring those guys, and we'll see what happens, but what they've delivered so far just shows that they are nothing, unfortunately, without Steve Rogers, without Chris Evans. But Clint is a different story. We kind of speculated and gave Loki the benefit of the doubt going into it, saying, there's enough time from the decision of going weekly between when WandaVision started and when Loki started that we'll finally kind of see what Marvel intends for a released weekly show and how that's structured. But in all honesty, this is really the first.
Yeah,
because Loki was in production. It was, it was still in post-production and doing finishing touches and stuff when WandaVision was being released, and the decision was made, okay, let's do weekly. So Loki had enough time to change their structuring format, their editing format, all that stuff. But the production was done. The writing was done. So Hawkeye, because of COVID and because of, these bogus things with Jeremy Renner and stuff that kind of slowed everything down is now truly from start to finish. This is what a show is going to be structured like for a weekly release on Disney Plus in the MCU, and it's delivering, man. Like Jeremy Renner as Clint is awesome. They capture his and I don't think Jeremy Renner's like this amazing actor with all this like depth and nuance and stuff, but I do like him. And I do think that he's perfectly cast for Clint. So while he's not like, I don't know, Leonardo DiCaprio, like with all this range and like can play anything kind of thing, he's Clint. He's perfect for it, and he delivers on what we need. He's got the, the monotone kind of talk, the sarcastic kind of humor, all that kind of, the father figure. He just delivers on all those points, and credit where credit's due. The writing and the direction and the look of this show is phenomenal so far. Like, there's nothing in this show so far that's made me go ugh, or has taken me out of it, which is not the case at all when it was Captain or you've got me saying it. Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I feel like every couple seconds I was like, what is going on? Why would they do this? Why do they edit this way? Why do they write it this way? But I haven't felt any of that so far.
If anything,
Hawkeye.
there were like moments in Hawkeye that probably could have more easily felt that way that we felt in Captain Falcon, where it should have been harder over there, because Captain Falcon, we're dealing with like military and all this other shit, but then you have like these really cheesy like character interactions, and then like the way that the military is presented, it's like I feel like I'm watching Arrow. Like, what is going on? And then we go into Hawkeye, where we're dealing with like Kate Bishop's like family drama, and I'm like, this really lends itself to possibly be like very melodramatic, but like it's engaging. I'm invested in what's happening. I don't remember the actress's name, but the gal who like is from the Conjuring movies and stuff, who plays Kaylee Steinfeld's mom, does a really great job at playing her role as well.
Farmiga.
There we go.
Vera Farmiga.
And I just, first and foremost, it being set in the Christmas time is really cool.
The Christmas aesthetic is phenomenal.
Makes it feel different. I will say, having just been from New York, there's not enough trash in the streets for the show, first and foremost. So that pulled me out of the immersion a little bit. I am glad, having seen the show, I had a hunch that the casting was good, because I like Haley Steinfeld and other work that she's done. But I'm really glad that Marvel held out for her to be Kate Bishop, because I think that her and Jeremy Renner have really good chemistry on screen, and I'm excited to see more of her. The other thing I was really interested by, so for those who don't know, and I'm only going to speak on this briefly because I am not an expert on this at all, but a lot of story beats for this show are pulling inspiration from Matt Fraction's run on Hawkeye, which is where the dog comes from, and like the tracksuit mafia and things like that. And that, honestly, a quick side tangent, that's probably why this show is also maybe a little bit better as far compared to some of the other Marvel shows, because it actually has like a blueprint somewhere else, like pull inspiration from, whereas Captain Falcon was pulling from nothing.
Basically, yeah.
But Matt Fraction's run is highly acclaimed. Matt Fraction has done a lot of really great comic book writing as well. So what I was impressed by, though, is when Joss Whedon introduced Clint Barton's family in Avengers 2, I remember being okay with it, but I was also like, the only Clint that we know in the comics is this like boisterous playboy who's a super flirt. And so I've been impressed by this show to see that they are adapting moments and personality quirks of Clint from the comics and from Matt Fraction's run, but also like he still be a family man, if that makes any sense at all. Like, he still is super charismatic. It's very quick-witted. But I always thought when Joss Whedon introduced that could possibly be like a crux on Clint Barton moving forward. But it's worked out really well. and I've enjoyed that. And there's a lot of really emotional moments where you realize, because when the show first starts, I'm like, man, is there like, are they doing that cliche where he and the wife are on an outs, and maybe that's how they're able to do the Matt Fraction run, because he is isolated in that entire comic book run. He's not with the team or anything like that. So maybe he's separated, and that's how he's doing this thing. But no, he's been without his family for 5 years, and so she's allowing him the space to just spend time with his kids,
Mm-hmm.
and to see also how incredibly supportive she is in the second episode, especially, where she's like, she's not making him feel guilty about having to be late. Like, she understands what he's doing. And that's something that I think is really cool, because we don't see a lot of her throughout all the movies, but that speaks volumes of their relationship, and how like Clint in this universe is a accomplished shield agent. And so she's been through this rodeo before, and she
Mm-hmm.
knows that he has a mission to do, and she is his rock. And that was really cool to see.
It was also cool to see that he has apparently told her everything, because
Yeah.
she was super in the know with like what he was doing. Like, he wasn't being coy or lying or leaving anything out. She was actively asking, okay, what's going on with the suit? How are you going to fix this? Is it going to be a problem? So that speaks even more to what you brought up with their relationship. Like, she is his rock, and he tells her everything.
Yeah.
Like,
How
everything.
easy, when we see shows like this before, Clay, how easy is it for a writer's room to just like throw in mistrust and doubt into like an established relationship or marriage, just to cause friction? And it's
Oh
kind of
yeah,
like,
it happens all the time.
it's kind of refreshing to see like, that's not
There's yeah,
that's
there
not
is
happening
yeah,
here.
there is no drama. There doesn't have to be drama. Yeah.
um as far as the action goes, I think the pacing of the show is really great. um I love that it's not jam packed with action, and yet it still feels like you watched a lot. It doesn't drag at all.
Mm-hmm.
But when they do the subtle Hawkeye stuff, I fucking love it. Like the Molotov cocktail scene, it was so great. How he like breaks the window first and then catches it and
And
then
then
throws it
throws
back.
it back. Yeah. Yeah, I love that stuff too, because he is like human, but he is almost superhuman, because he's super accurate with whatever he does. And little moments like that are just so cool to see him just super accurate, not only in catching it, but throwing it right back at those dudes was so cool. So,
Yeah. And I like that we're retreading Ronin stuff, but not necessarily through like flashbacks. It's interesting how it's fun to watch him interact with Haley, and then other people that interact with the suit, where he's like, what did you do in this? Who saw you? Because he basically knows that like all of the shit that he did in that suit is going to follow and come crashing down on whoever's wearing it just by happenstance.
yeah.
Which leads us to, and I'll let you talk about it first, which leads us to probably one of the most charming, fantastic Marvel scenes I think I've ever fucking seen.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, he tracks down the suit to which there are little things that are like, okay, I'm just going to go with it because it's a television show, but a firefighter finds the Ronin suit at the scene of a fire and just keeps it. He takes it from this person's apartment instead of like, I don't know, like that's somebody's, but they
Right.
take
Yeah.
it. But you just go with it, and so he's wearing the Ronin suit. Also, at this point, don't you think that there would be cosplays of Ronin all over the place? Like, it's a little bit of a stretch that this one suit would be like, oh, that's Ronin. You know what I mean? It's a little bit of a stretch, but
Yeah.
not enough to make me like. I mean, it's a comic book show, so it's not enough to make me say this is terrible. It's just a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
But that being said, this firefighter, he's a LARPer, and
Right.
he finds the Ronin suit at the scene of this fire, and he's like, "Oh, cool! This is a sweet ninja suit, so I'm gonna wear it to this LARPing thing." And Clint has to go get it back, and they won't let him into the event or to talk to this guy until it's over, which would be at midnight. And this is like in the morning when this is happening. He's like, well, I can't wait till midnight because I'm trying to get home for Christmas. So he ends up joining the LARP session. And we go through, they change the camera to like this high frame rate, like gritty look. And it's just him just sarcastically and casually destroying these kids LARPing. He like doing like super, it's like, it'd be like me fighting my 6-year-old is what it's like when he goes onto this
when he
field.
sweeps and takes out all 6 of those people.
Yes, he gets he gets surrounded by all these people, and he's just like, and just like does a quick sweep, and they all fall over, and they're being over dramatic because they're LARPers. They're just like all like, and it's being filmed like it's like Kingdom, that medieval movie Kingdom. That's how it looks. Oh man, it's so funny.
He walks up to the firefighter and basically catches a deal where the firefighter's like, just let me kill you, like this means a lot to me. And then like he's sitting there thinking about it, and he's like, I fought Thanos, fine. And then like walks over.
Yes, I love his conversation with him too, because, and this is a great example of why Clint works so well. He goes, I can fake kill you and take the suit, or I can real punch you and take the suit. I just love how he says real punch you.
I'm plumb out of patience, he says.
Oh man, that whole sequence just encompasses, I think, the heart of what this show is going to be, and I love it. I love it.
So I actually ended up watching episode 2 twice today. I enjoyed it so much. I was like, this, I'm very excited for this. So the 2 things I want to make sure that we talk about as we're kind of getting, so we don't get lost in the weeds, is one, it's very interesting that all the things on that black market sale are from the Avengers compound, which I can only assume is from Endgame.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which makes you wonder what else is being sold in the black market.
I wonder what that watch is about, because it was obviously, I'm gonna assume that all this stuff, if not most of it, came from the wreckage of the Avenger compound. Somehow it's
right.
It's been recovered, and these the black market has got its hands on it, and they're selling it. And these tracksuit mafia guys are after this watch, and we don't know what the watch is about.
Yeah, I'm interested about the watch. The 2 villains that seem to be coming to the forefront, I still hope are more red herrings. We have Jacob, who I think his name was, the fiance of Kate Bishop's mom. He pretty clearly at this point is probably the one who killed Armand III.
Oh yeah.
And I had a moment where I was like, I hope he doesn't actually end up being like the main villain. But there is these other things going on as well. So I think he's just going to be a side tangent. The episode 2 ends with the emphasis of zooming in on an actress who plays the character of Echo, who Marvel just announced is getting her own show a few months ago. And Echo, for those who don't know, is a Native American hero who has close ties to the Kingpin and Daredevil, like so close. Her ties are so close, it would be like telling a Miles Morales story without Peter Parker, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
She's a deaf hero, so kind of like Daredevil, but she can't hear. And the actress who plays her is also deaf in real life, and also is an amputee. She's missing one of her legs. So I think that this show is purposefully, this is me on my conspiratorial tinfoil hat, I think that the show is purposefully trying to show you this could be the villain, this could be the villain, all to keep you off the scent. The actual villain is the Kingpin, which I would be so excited if that were the case.
Well, and that's not completely unfounded. We've had rumors for basically the entirety of the development of the show that Vince Giffords, or whatever his name is going to be returning as Kingpin in the Hawkeye show. And we've all but confirmed that Charlie Cox is Daredevil in No Way Home. So I don't think it's too far out there to think that that's going to be what's happening. Um, I mean, now's the time to bring those guys back if it's going to happen at all. So if Charlie Cox is not in No Way Home, if Kingpin's not in Hawkeye, I don't foresee them coming back. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Or at least those actors. The characters may come to the MCU at some point, but it's kind of now or never for the actors that we already know.
I agree. And Tim had made an interesting point where he was like, maybe they'll keep it even under wraps until Far From Home comes out. Because if we do see Vincent in Hawkeye, that pretty much all confirms that Charlie Cox will be in No Way Home. But I was looking at it, and as of right now, No Way Home's release date is December 17th. And
Hmm.
if they actually wanted to play that play, it would be it wouldn't be till the sixth episode of Hawkeye that we would get a reveal of Kingpin if they wanted that to be after that movie came out. And I feel like that's too far in if that's going to be
There's
the
8
case.
episodes of Hawkeye.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little far in. But again, Kingpin pulling the strings, he just because he's pulling the strings and he's at the top doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be the forefront bad guy.
True.
You know what I mean?
True.
So we could have all these things that are happening at ground level, and then it's revealed, who's pulling all the strings? Who are these guys actually answering to? And it's revealed towards the end of the series that it's Kingpin. Um, so
Yeah. And there's also other things that we can basically expect to see that has not been in any of the marketing. Like we can basically, I think, expect to see Yelena popping up at some point,
yeah.
based on how Black Widow ended. Um,
Well,
and
also
man,
based on how
he acted at
how
Jimmy
yeah,
Fallon.
on Jimmy Fallon, Fallon flat out asked him if she'd be in the show, and he was like, he's taken like playing dumb for keeping Marvel secrets to like a whole new level. Renner has, where
Yeah.
he's just like, "What are you talking about? I don't know who that is." Like he completely plays dumb, gives no breadcrumbs, and that alone leads me to believe that there's something to be hidden there. So
Yeah. And to that point, I gotta say, having spent months on the internet waiting for No Way Home to come out, it is also refreshing to be going into a property like this and like
not know what's happening.
not know what's happening. And I had texted you and Tim, and I was like, I wonder if one of the reasons that Marvel is so good about keeping their secrets when everything is in house is maybe they have like such strict contracts where it's like if you were found out to be the reason information leaks on and it wasn't on purpose, you don't get any of the money that you were supposed to be paid. That's the only way I can think because
Yeah,
every time it's
it's
under lock and key.
yeah, it's got to be something like that because they do a great job. And I guarantee you, the only reason we have these No Way Home leaks, unless you want to believe the conspiracy theories that all the leaks are like on purpose to build hype and like have all this talk, the only reason that there are leaks is because Sony's involved. Because
Oh,
if
100%.
this is just a Marvel property, we wouldn't know anything about No Way Home. Nothing.
No,
And I would almost jump out and say that the trailers would be even a little bit more obscure.
definitely. No, I completely agree. Because I feel like if it was all for a marketing ploy, that's almost too risky because you risk burnout. Because I'm starting to feel a little burned out where it's like, okay, at this point, we basically know that Andrew and Toby are in the movie. And if they're not, so here's the two ways it can go. I've it's been shoved down my throat so much that either when they show up on screen, I'm gonna be like, yeah, okay. Like I basically knew this was gonna happen,
Mm-hmm.
or they're not going to be there. And I'm be like, oh, that's kind of lame. Like, why didn't you do that? So
Yeah.
I've gone from either completely just loving the movie if they weren't in it, or being like completely blown out of my theater seat, having not known that they were in it, to now kind of like semi apathetic either way. Where I'm like, I don't think that that was a purposeful marketing strategy because it's too risky. And as someone who loves a hype culture, I'm I'm kind of burnt out on it a little bit.
Yeah, random man on the internet said, imagine if we hadn't known. Imagine if stuff hadn't been leaked and you went into the theater and all of a sudden you see Toby and Andrew on screen. Like, imagine you know nothing. Don't even suspect what the reaction would be in the theater.
It would literally put Cap picking up Mjolnir
To shame.
to shame.
Yeah.
It would be that is a next level thing. And to have not, we've been robbed. I've kind of said that before, and without like being overly winded about it, we've just been robbed.
Well, you know who else has been robbed? Marvel and Sony of their payday. Can you imagine? Because we're still in the time where movies, it's always going to be a question of whether they make enough to justify continuing. You know, Marvel obviously is probably an exception to the rule, but Dune, for example, is the most recent example where we didn't know if part 2 was actually going to come until we saw those box office numbers. Like, it was all but guaranteed if Dune delivered in the box office. If Dune delivered in the box office, green light, easy peasy. But if Dune didn't deliver in the box office, nope, there's not going to be a part 2. So we're still there. We're still feeling the effects of, coming out of the COVID days of 2020. We're still feeling it in the theater and in that marketplace. But just imagine, all that to say, imagine nobody knows this stuff's happening. Like we just said, you go in, the theater erupts, and everybody comes out of that first viewing and explodes onto social media saying, you've got to go see this movie. It gets hyped up like crazy. Imagine the payday. Just imagine. And they're not going to get that.
No. And this is something I don't think I've ever.
I mean, it's still going to be huge. Don't get me wrong. It's still going to be huge. But we're talking, this had the potential to be in-game breaking as far as records go.
Yeah.
If it had been handled properly.
Yeah. And, I've talked to some coworkers about this. I don't think I've actually talked to you about it. The whole watching the internet behave with the No Way Home leaks had me think about something kind of interesting, in my opinion. And that is comparing fandoms and how people in that community react differently to things. And for as toxic as the Star Wars community can be accused of, when Force Awakens came out and Han Solo died, there was such a fierce, unspoken rule that you don't say anything.
Yeah, you don't spoil
about this.
And if people did, they got buried. If somebody commented, that comment got buried.
There was a barista at a Starbucks that was down the street from the Starbucks I was working at, and he thought it was funny to ruin it. So he was telling customers that next day that Han Solo died, and his manager sent him home. And I'm glad, because there are some just shitty people who will do shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, everyone's like, I'm not, you just have to go see it. And so again, just to circle back around, Star Wars gets flack for being so toxic. But if something like this happened in a Star Wars movie, people would just be like, this movie's going to fucking blow your minds. You got to see it. I'm not going to tell you why. And so I feel like I 100% am certain that if it were up to the fans, even that reveal of Toby and Andrew probably would have been kept secret almost the entire opening day weekend.
Yeah, I'd say you're probably right. There'd just be hype. Go see it. You have to go see it. You'll understand why.
Yeah.
So
I can only imagine what Kevin Feige is like behind closed doors.
Oh man, he's got to be fuming right now. He's got to be fuming. But we are at 54 minutes, so let's get off of this random tangent and just give some final thoughts. I don't really think I have any more to say about Hawkeye, except I'm super excited as to where it's going. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. This is what I want from an MCU show. So
Yeah, I'm at the same place where it's nice to have a show that I'm excited to watch. So between Dexter and this, I now have two shows on a weekly basis where I'm just jonesing for the next one. Um, cannot stress enough the quality that is in this show, like from the camera to like the music. Um, it's all great. The dialogue is superb. And I'm just excited to kind of get to know Clint more. And let me tell you, it's making me get even more attached to the character that I'm going to be bumming pretty hard if he is on the way out. So I'll be curious to see what his future is with the MCU.
yeah,
Um, but I hope that he sticks around a little bit longer, especially after this.
yeah, it kind of sucks with the MCU in particular because we already lost Captain America, we already lost Iron Man. Who knows honestly how long Chris Hemsworth will do Thor? He's said that now that Taika has revitalized the character and that franchise that he wants to play it forever basically, but we've seen them say that over and over, and they keep walking out the door. Even Tom Holland now is saying, I don't know if I want to play Spider-Man the rest of my life. To be honest, I don't even know if I want to act the rest of my life. He's talking about wanting to buy apartment buildings and just live a normal life.
Yeah,
So to your point, I do want to see. I don't want this to be the last time we see Clint. We need to have some characters that continue on through the next few phases before they leave. And Clint and Thor, they're kind of the only ones left from that, aren't they? They're the only ones left.
Bruce
Oh,
Banner is back.
Bruce is
Yeah,
still around.
and he'll be in She-Hulk. And there are some pretty substantial rumors that they are going to be making a World War Hulk movie. So
I feel like they missed the boat on that though,
I
because
mean, I do
a
too.
lot of aspects from World War Hulk were put into Thor Ragnarok. Because he's trapped on that planet in the comics, and when he comes back from that planet is when World War Hulk happens.
Guys, I'm gonna fuck you up because you sent me over there,
Yeah,
you
he's
bastards.
all pissed off because he was banished. But in the MCU, he chose banishment, went to that planet, and now he's back and he's a hero again. So I don't understand how they could make it work.
Yeah, I don't either. I think the only way that I've said this before, and I won't go on a tangent, but I think that the only logical thing to do with Hulk at this point is to go the Maestro route. And the idea, the concept of Maestro is Hulk is behind the driver's seat with Banner's intelligence. And so it's basically going to be the inverse of Professor Hulk,
Mm-hmm.
where maybe they find out that that homeostasis is not as equal footing as Bruce made it seem to be. And there's a rubber band effect where the Hulk is able to take control. And then he's a diabolical villain with the Hulk strength and with Bruce's intelligence. And I feel like honestly, it's probably the only last interesting thing you could do with that character at this point.
Yeah, I agree.
But no. But regardless, Hawkeye was great. Can't wait to see it. Um, I'm hoping that we like Echo. And the only reason why I say that, Clayton, is because they announced before we even saw Hawkeye that she's getting her own show. And the only hesitation I have with all the Marvel properties that are being announced is I'm never one to say that we're going to hit Marvel fatigue, but there is something to be said that like not everyone needs a property.
Yeah, I agree. We'll see. I don't know. And she's obviously kind of like a bad guy right now. So, but she's a
Yeah.
hero in the comics, right? So we'll see. I don't know. And for those who are curious about her power, she's like a light taskmaster. She can
Mm-hmm.
see things and like repeat them. I don't think she like forever knows them. I think that's the limitation. She can like repeat and kind
Yeah,
of
I think
use
she's
it.
more like a mimic.
Yeah. Rather than I see it once and I know it forever like Taskmaster.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see. I also worry about Marvel fatigue. Haven't hit it yet, but man, they keep announcing more stuff.
Yeah. And we haven't talked about it, but like this Spider-Man animated show freshman year, I I don't know what there is to explore there, because the timeline that the MCU has set up is that show really only has about 4 months to 6 months of time to explore. So maybe it's just one season, but it just seems odd. I don't know if there's a lot of stories to tell there because you can't introduce villains.
Yeah, I don't know. It might just be a small, limited series geared towards kids. So who knows?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this week's The Nerdosphere. We thank you for joining us for this Marvel Watchers Light episode. And go watch Hawkeye if you're a fan of the MCU, which, who are we kidding? If you're listening to this, you're a fan of the MCU. So go watch Hawkeye. Stop waiting. Get the Christmas vibes. Get the MCU television show you deserve. And enjoy yourself some Hawkeye. Yeah, that does it. That does it. If you love us, go, and you're on an Apple device, scroll down and give us 5 stars. We'd really appreciate it. If you're a fan of the Nerdosphere and the Wheel of Time, or just, you just like us, go over to Wheel of Time Watchers and give us a review over there as well. Brand new, fresh show, needing some reviews so we can continue to get in front of the eye holes. We're super easy to find. Even if you just search the Wheel of Time, we're like the 4th or 5th show that pops up. Like, we're pretty proud of already being right there, and our audience is really good for only 2 episodes. So help us out and give us some reviews over there so we can continue to find new ear holes. If you really like what we do, go over to patreon.com/thenerdosphere, where you can join the Nerdosphere family, get access to our patron-exclusive supplemental podcast, Nerd Tea, where we just talk about random crap that we want to, as you get to know us a little bit better, get some more content from us, as well as other stuff as you go up the tiers. So yeah, we appreciate your listen, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
I can do this all day.
Oh, God.